All right, we are live. Tom Dowd, welcome back to the Future of Fitness.
Hey, this is great. Really excited to speak with you. And it's been over a year and a half, as we talked about earlier, and it's just crazy how much progress you've made and what a different tone and energy there is today rather than a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Oh, it's night and day. It's absolutely night and day. And in preparation for this interview, I obviously talked to a couple people on your team, Luke Armstrong. I talked to some other people in the industry media, and everything. All the reports are extremely positive, and I'll be one of the first to say, well done on turning this ship around. I think when you took it over, I'm sure you were golfing a lot more. You were enjoying life quite a bit, but you had to step in and be the CEO of a company and make some hard decisions and make some tough moves and get people updated. This is just from the Athletech article that I was just reading about last year. You guys had a record-setting year. We saw 75 new studios open across 3 brands, 12.4% growth in global average unit volumes for F45 training, 23.9 for FS8, and 51.1 for VAURA. Am I saying that right? VAURA Pilates?
Yep, VAURA. Yeah. Renamed last year.
Yeah. You guys now we're going to talk about the Fit House of Brands. So that's functionally inspired training. So that's kind of your overall entity that you're pulling these brands under. You guys had some really great partnerships, High Rocks, Spartan, Samsung, Dr. B, and GLP-1s. I'd love to dig into that. And I'd love to get your input on tariffs as well. So obviously there's a lot to talk about, Tom. Let's start with this. So yeah, we published our last interview in September of 2023. People go back to that. It's great context for where we are now. Tell me about the last year and a half. What's been going on with your life at F45, and how did you get it to where it is now?
Yeah, so we really exceeded expectations. I mean, I was always optimistic. Obviously, I wouldn't have jumped in if I didn't absolutely love the brand. And again, I've been an investor for like 6 years now. So to come in and execute on all the things that I saw that were being poorly executed or not executed on was very rewarding for me. To come in and fix something and put something back on track is always a good move, when you have a good product, right? So that's always a great starting place. So I don't want to take too much credit because the product was the star of the show always, and just mismanagement was the problem. So coming in as the CEO, from an investor to the CEO, really helped cut through the clutter and cut out the middleman, if you will, and enabled me to just come in and do the things that, I grew up doing, running big organizations and investing in things and taking an operational and marketing position in many of these deals to help expedite on strategies. This was really, one-on-one stuff in many regards, but it was a tough run because we had a lot of, mistakes that were made in the past that were always correctable, right? In management, it's always about, I have the mentality that everything can be fixed with smart people in the room. And so one of my first moves was, making sure I had the best people around me. So now I'm very comfortable with the team that we have. Many of them have been here for years. So that's great. So they always had the energy and the talent. They just needed the leadership and the guidance and support, knowing that, we're in this together. We're all working hard towards the same goal. I believe firmly that everybody always wants the best or always has the best intentions, right? So just giving them the support and guidance and pushing them to do better and execute on the things that they know will help us was really key. And of course, we made some changes and got rid of some folks that really, either didn't have the skill set or didn't have the mentality to take the ride with us. But yeah, the folks you spoke to, I couldn't be more proud of, and just excited about the level of execution and support that we have when it comes to first starting with our members. How do we make our membership continue to grow? Like you pointed out, our best ever average unit volume, AUVs. So very proud of our marketing team for that. Very proud of our franchise system for helping create that atmosphere where people want to stay on longer and join up. So that's been great. So yeah, that's it. Because, from a marketing standpoint, we have to sell memberships and we have to sell franchises. And when you have great memberships and happy franchisees, you're always going to sell franchises. So my focus was always on making the product better and the franchisees happier and more profitable. That will always take care of the franchise selling.
At a granular level, how did you go about making the franchisees happier and inevitably making more money? Like what were some of the key points on that?
Well, the first thing was giving them a voice, listening and getting involved with them. This was just a sell and forget model for the most part. So we flipped that model into, a support model. So, as simple as it sounds, we can't be successful unless the franchisees are successful because it's a franchise model. So, so we started listening and we started forums and answering emails and getting direct responses. I mean, I spend hours a week engaging with franchisees, so it went from, negative to thank you. We're on the right track. I have a small issue here, but again, thank you for everything you guys are doing. So it's very rewarding to see that flip in just the simple communications that we get constantly. And I'm in the weeds probably more than I am normally used to in this case, just because it enabled me to really understand things faster and move faster because we were at a critical state, right? So, we needed to get things back on track. Luckily, we have great supporters with Kennedy Lewis, the big group that's invested in this with us. So that's been, very rewarding to have folks who really love the business like we do, who believe in what we could have done and we're, I guess, frustrated, not to use a polite term, with what happened in the past, but it was a blip in time, like most things. So it really created a much better opportunity for everybody because now, we're really on the upswing here. It's creating more opportunity for people. We jumped hard and pushed hard into the Pilates business, with FS8, which is on fire. We're just selling them hand over fist. Tons of interested parties, really quality people wanting to come into the system now. And then VAURA, which is our big fancy gun, big volume, it costs more to build out. It's just, a beautiful execution with the mirrors and the lights and the energy, so we have two really strong Pilates concepts, but very different concepts. So we're catering to different, demo profile, but both of them are banging away. I just had dinner a few months ago with the folks who are, in Singapore with VAURA, moving into Dubai now to really blow that market up with VAURA. So very, very big opportunities for us worldwide with our different concepts. And then, we're also, as a CEO, I believe the main job of a CEO is to be very strategic and always have something, that you're working towards without losing focus on the key things that make a big difference. When I first came on, there was a lot of folks that told me just focus on F45. And, I was fully dedicated to, I could do both. I could definitely continue to drive F45 and grow that, which we are, by the way, which is amazing, and then also focus on, the two businesses that we had that were just kind of sitting in a corner with nobody paying attention to them. But Pilates was on fire in the world, but we were just not paying attention to it because everybody was so focused on F45 and ignoring Pilates. So we went back, really challenged the workouts, started there. And then once we got that figured out, we just really put our back into driving the Pilates business, alongside of F45. And right now, the big strategy move for us, which is working and we're very excited about, is actually moving into more of a mid-box studio business with multiple concepts together that complement each other. So envision F45 together with FS8 or VAURA, and then recovery, which recovery is something else we're really getting involved in with cold plunge and sauna. We have a name lockdown called Ion, so we'll be following that pretty soon, but that's also a great complement to our business. And our existing studios now can move forward with recovery with the F45 recovery business. So it's just an add-on. If you have extra space, we can add, a sauna, for example, or a cold plunge. But Ion is just another concept that's a plug-in for us. It's a complement to what we have. But so moving from, call it 2,000 square feet to 4,500 square feet with having retail in the middle, recovery behind it, 5 on one side. So you have the high intensity interval training, and then you have the low intensity Pilates workout on the other side. So the energy that creates and the efficiencies that are created with this is a big move for us. It's and of course, most importantly, it's another way for our franchisees to now have another revenue stream driver, and then the crossover, the pollinating between the members is always a win for us. So, even if 10, 15% cross over to the other modality, that's a big win for us. And then, of course, just from an operational standpoint, gives you better cost per square foot, gives you more horsepower with your landlord, gives you better visibility most of the time, rather than being stuffed into somewhere with a small footprint. Now you're expanding that. So now you're going to get better visibility within centers. It gives you more speaking points from a marketing standpoint. We think that that's a big, powerful move for us as a brand. Not only having these different modalities are all on trend, by the way, and doing very well, but combining them to create this powerhouse. And, we don't want to be in a big box business. The world needs another big box gym like a hole in the head. So we don't want to be there. We want to keep our costs down, make it really easy for franchisees who are reasonably capitalized to get into the business and have multiple levers of revenue to pull that'll really generate some really top line growth. And again, we're not dragging any crazy modality through the mud. Everything we have is just hitting on all cylinders. So that's a good space for us to be in.
Awesome. There's a lot of things I want to dig into there. I want to ask one more question about the last 18 months, and then we'll talk about all these things. So I have questions about how do you know when something's innovative or when it's a distraction, from a strategic standpoint. But what do you think was one of the hardest things you had to do, Tom, over the last 18 months to get this thing in the direction it's going now?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we had a lot of accounting issues and just, things that we had to fix, that were mismanaged. So that for us, that was just, a lot of legal issues from just past things. But, moving through all that and being able to focus at the same time, it was difficult, but not impossible, right? Obviously, because we stayed on track with, I didn't have the luxury of just focusing on getting our books refixed and working with Deloitte. Luckily I have, a great CFO and Patrick, but, so a lot of that, I guess you could say, non-glamorous parts of the business had to be fixed first to make sure we're on solid ground before we really, could go out there and be loud and proud about what we're doing. So I had to do both, work on strategy, focus on, the core business to continue to grow it, fix our marketing. That included everything from just our strategy and our messaging to our website, to our app, to a lot of the background stuff like mind body, working on a lot of those initiatives, which we did. And again, to the team's credit, we were able to do all these things together as we were growing the business and focusing on the things that we just needed to get fixed from past management. So that was probably the hardest thing. It was more complicated than I thought when I said yes. Because I used to actually say, it's a franchise business. It shouldn't be this difficult on the sidelines. But then when I got in and saw the different poor decisions that were made that had to be fixed, it was just a lot of work. And by the way, rebuilding the trust with the franchise system was something I knew I could do by doing the right things and showing them that I'm here for the long haul and that I'm there working for them. The message is always that, I work for you. I work for my employees. I work for the franchisees and I work for the members, and that's my mentality always in everything I do. Even when I was at GNC, I always worked for the customer. But, so if they feel that that's true, and then more importantly, because you say it, but then you show it by responding to emails and taking phone calls and working at all hours to talk like last night, with South Korea, till 9:00 at night. Those things show people that you're just not some guy that's, dropped in to try and make some money and then, jump out again. I'm here for the long ride. I'm here to do the right thing. And I'm here to showcase, what this should have been all along, which for me, it's all about pride, prideful moments, like winning. I don't want to sound like Charlie Sheen, but winning is important. You get into things not so much for the money anymore, and luckily, but you get into it because you have people that invested, their money, like our investment group. I have people that put in because of me, so it really bothered me that people lost money and didn't get a return on their investment when they put real money into this because of me. So, for me, it was like, now at least, I'm showcasing that I'm, somebody that makes things happen and wants to do the right thing by everybody that's involved in this business. And, and then when you get to know the people and the franchisees, you start to really take it personal. Again, I grew up in a family business, so to my detriment, a lot of times I take everything personal. So when you get to know the people, you learn their stories, and now you really even work harder for them because there's employees here that put a lot of time and effort into this business, and to have bad leadership, waste their time and not be able to deliver for them is a shame. And then have franchisees that put their life savings in some cases into the business and have weak management and people that are just not respectful of capital is, to me, very bothersome and something that, we fixed. And we had to work hard to win back that trust. So, a good example is I didn't even want to go to Australia until I could showcase that we're actually doing something that was meaningful. I didn't want to just go down there and be a talking head. I wanted to go down there with real things that we've done and be able to talk about things that we're absolutely doing in the future. And it was really encouraging to get down into a market that's more, seasoned, if you will, who, suffered during COVID more than most. There was a real lockdown issue in Australia and their economy's struggling, but to get down there and speak with people who actually appreciated the effort that we put into this business and trust you was really powerful for me. So we continue to move through the hard things, and now we're focused on circling back to your question. Sorry, but so that was a lot of hard stuff, winning back the trust, dealing with all the BS stuff I like to call with the accounting stuff and things that, we just had to go back and reshuffle everything. But, now focusing, even if it's 80% of the time on the go-go stuff, the good stuff, that for me is where I really hit my stride and really love to hit the gas and, get going. There's always problems. There's always things, no matter how good your business is. But I'm also somebody, a lot of leaders just like to focus on the good stuff. I'm very good at focusing on both, but, I love to focus on the growth stuff.
Well, let's talk about that. One of the things I've noticed during my time engaging with F45, because I was able to work with Luke Armstrong years and years ago on different consulting projects, but there was always a sense of innovation within F45, whether it was like new types of hardware for the gym or getting into cruise ships or getting onto campuses and things like that. And now, you're talking about some really interesting stuff that you guys are working with on like the recovery section, and then, the GLP-1 programs in the line with Dr. B and these really cool Pilates. At what point do you think to yourself, and I think every business owner from, an independent gym to, 2,000 locations, right? They always struggle with, is this innovation and progress, or is this a distraction from our core business? So when you look at all these different things, like how do you, is there a cipher in your mind that you go through when you look at, okay, I don't want to chase squirrels. This is substantial. I want to focus on this and grow. Like, how do you pick those things to focus on?
Yeah. Well, growing up at General Nutrition, GNC taught me a lot of things. And one of the things that I really learned, especially being a CMO running all the brands, was it's much easier to ride something that's hot and working than try and create something. So being a reactionary leader and a reactionary retailer was really part of my strength. So here we're not trying to create something and create a market for it. We see a market that's growing and hot. And then how do we come out with a product that's not just another Me Too product? How do we create something that's hot and make it bigger by having a better product? So with Pilates, for example, with FSA, we said, all right, we have a good product. We're doing well with it, but we're not spending marketing. We don't have brand equity or brand recognition. And then the answer from the team, when I said, do we have an amazing workout that will really take out the competition at the knees when we drop it into a market? And the answer was, oh yeah, we think so. And it's pretty good. It's good. And I said, well, come back to me, whatever it takes with something that you are telling me is great. Like it's a daisy cutter bomb that goes into a market that's something that's just not a Me Too product. And within a month, the team came back and made changes. So instead of moving from the reformer to a mat in the back of the room, now we combined it. They worked on the entire athletics, execution. So they came back and said, here are the 10 things we did to make it from good to great. I like the book. And already we've tested it and the members love it. So that's the other element. So, you could believe what you believe, but without testing it in the actual market, you're never going to, you're always going to make better decisions when you test it in the market. So a lot of organizations and leaders, think they have all the answers. I am always somebody that says, what are the members telling us? What are the consumers telling us? I think it's great, but I could be wrong. And I've been wrong a lot. Fortunately, having that back check of always pressure testing things is something that we do very well here. And Ryan Mays, our COO has done a great job with the team, going out and testing things. The athletic team's been amazing. So I'm very happy with their attention to the membership and listening and testing things and really having no ego. That's another thing. You have to take ego out of everything. So you have a great idea you think's great and it gets blown apart. You have to say, thank you. I love that. I'm glad I'm wrong. And I'm glad I didn't push it down everybody's throat and have a problem. Yeah. So innovations, it's so important in our business because if you're not innovative and moving forward constantly, you're going to get run over. So we're very focused on innovation, and having studios in our headquarters is great. Having the filming, the other thing about F45 and FS8 is the constant filming. So we have a tremendous amount of content there. So the team is always working with the studios. The team is always working on, the content element of it. So we're constantly getting feedback on what's happening. So that's just incredible for us, rather than just a trainer in a studio that isn't really tangible enough to get feedback. So we have tangible video, we have feedback, we have an app, we have at-home workouts, we're in hotels. And then we have the power of mass. So we have over 1,700 and growing studios that give us constant feedback. And again, listening, keeping your ear to the ground as far as what's going on. We're on Reddit, we're on reading social media, we have open lines of communication. So we're always listening and tweaking and paying real attention to what our members are telling us.
That's all. And one of the things you notice if people get into F45 is the tremendous media assets that you guys are constantly producing. It's impressive. Like even just visiting a headquarters in LA years ago, I was like, okay, they're devoted to creating great content and media. And I think that's really understated for what you guys do. What I want to talk about specifically is two things. The fit house of brands, when you guys have kind of reworked that overall thing. Yeah, on your shirt right there. Why? Why was that an important strategic move for you?
Yeah, that was easy. From almost week one, I envisioned changing the name to better represent when I decided that we needed to have more revenue streams for our franchisees who are in saturated markets and give them more ways to sell. So having that sitting in front of me was great. So, I was dreaming of the day when we could make the change because we were a real business again, growing with different modalities that were working. So for me to go from F45 Training Inc. to Fit House of Brands, Fit was a big move because it better represents and creates this umbrella of brands now for us to acquire other brands, to really encompass all of the things that are working for us with VAURA and FS8, like we talked about, and even Ion. So we just needed a better name. And for me, it was about telling the world, hey, we're not just F45 anymore. Absolutely love that business, and that's continuing to grow and do well, and that's never going to go away. But also we have these other businesses that are extremely popular and growing. And now the name better represents our growth strategy around, embracing everything we do 1,000% and not just kind of a lot of things when you test it or take on or acquire something kind of gets treated, not as well as the core business. So for me, we have to do everything equally. So everything has to be equally enthusiastic about everything we do with these different brands. So changing the name influence that and really sends a message that, that everything we do is going to be treated equally. It's not just F45 anymore. It's FS8, it's VAURA, it's Ion, it's whoever we acquire, it's whatever other test we come up with that works that we launch next year. And we're working on some really cool stuff. So the name just represents that and tells the world that, hey, we're in the business of being a total solution headquarters for health and wellness.
Yeah, fantastic. The VAURA Pilates brand, I don't know a lot about it. I'm sure that means a lot of people in the marketplace don't know a ton about it yet. Why is that one different? What's the differentiator for that?
It's an athletic reformer workout that's just crazy high energy with the lights. It's a dark studio with neon lights and amazing music like our other modalities. It's mirrors on the ceiling. It's mirrors on the walls. It's just an experience that people just come out of it with their mind blown, like, wow. And the workout's great, so it's also, so the workout's great. The environment's great. It's more she, you go in, we put more money into the bathrooms and the waiting room and everything else. So it's more of an experience. It's more of a build out commitment, but the ROI is great because the volume's better. We have studios doing, over $1 million and growing, over $1.4 million and growing. So the business is great, but for the average person to spend, whatever, call it 700 to $1 million for build out is a smaller market. It's not the workhorse of the Pilates brand for us. So for FS8, for example, that's more of our workhorse. So that you can get into it cheaper, that fits in Kansas City, whereas a VAURA is more of a Miami vibe, maybe. But VAURA's got a lot of legs, and VAURA could be in every single market on the planet, really, because there is a demo that really wants that high-end experience, and they're looking for it and they're longing for it. So it's just one of those things that, it's so great. And it's a different workout. So FS8 is the toning and the yoga elements of it as well with the Reformer Pilates. So this is VAURA is just a pure Pilates hardcore athletic workout on the Reformer. So it's different in that regard. So and the nice thing about FS8 is, we're not trying to be all things to all people. Those workout elements within FS8 are really complementing each other and creating a great workout for our members. So it's really a different experience. And we have franchisees now, and I can't really say where, but it's New York City, who are looking at doing FS8, VAURA, and F45 together in one big place. So we're very excited about that because it's going to really showcase how even the two Pilates businesses with F45 will all work together. But he's even talking about maybe squeezing in, if he can afford it, from a space standpoint, the recovery, because NYC's real estate's crusher as far as rent factor. But yeah, so it'll be great. And you know what? When they first said they want to put FS8 and VAURA together, separate but together, I was, but within 10 minutes of listening to the thought process, I was all in. Like, wow, that makes perfect sense. So that's how even those two concepts can work together. So I'm excited to see how that works. But when you look at the demand for the category, we really have, the tiger by the tail here. So, and again, you have to measure that and not get too caught up in the moment. But really now measuring and managing our growth is just as hard as managing a downturn in something. So we're very focused on continuing to build our operations team, continuing to support supply and demand when it comes to our equipment, people supporting the grand openings and supporting the opening. So we're very focused on measuring where we even allow franchisees to open, being very involved and hands-on. Again, we'd rather have less franchisees with more profitable studios than more locations that are less profitable. So we're very focused on proper growth and managing that properly.
The Ion recovery, is that a potentially standalone concept or is that a plug-in for the most part? Like how are you envisioning that?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a standalone. We're filing the FTDs now, so it'll be a standalone. So ideally, it'll be maybe it's a pass through with the studio you can go access it through the front or the back as well. But it'll have separate sign, separate experience, and if you don't belong to one studio like an F45, you can still belong to Ion and never work out. Ideally, though, it's a great draw because you get somebody in and go, oh, what's that? What's going on over there? I want to do that, or vice versa. I want to do a cold plunge or a sauna after a workout. So it's a really great complementing business, but it could also be a mile away. It could be, totally separate. So that's the beauty part of it. But we're treading lightly. That's not a big lift for us as far as effort to build it out. It doesn't have the trainers and athletics and content filming and everything else. So for us, coming from where we're coming from, this is kind of an easy lift for us. We have good partners with Chili Goat. So we're really happy with, where we're going with that business. And again, it's a great complement to our core businesses.
What are the modalities for that? I mean, you mentioned cold plunge and sauna. Is there any other ones that you're gonna throw in there?
Yeah, percussion, so the recovery with, so that's a big part of it. And then red light therapy is a big part. I think red light therapy is continuing to build because of the science and just people are looking for it. So yeah, so it'll all be encompassed there, because recovery is hot. Recovery is something that's going to continue, especially with the aging population. And again, creating this hub of everything health and wellness and being the solution headquarters with content, which is a big win for us because we have more content than anybody else right now on the planet because of our core business is filming content because it's on the TVs, it's on the screen. So we have a real leg up when it comes to providing content. And that's a big win because, being the authority in health and wellness through content is always a big win. So we are really strong there. So just taking advantage of that's key. But yeah, so we're really confident about, our ability to grow and become more powerful in the industry as we continue to add more locations and create more of these, like I said, bigger locations with more going on. And again, this time next year, we should follow up because we'll have another concept which will revolve more around, I guess I could say, hot workouts. So in a heated environment, not hot, but hot as well from a trend standpoint, but from a heated element. So we're running down a path of yoga and Pilates in a heated environment. And how do we contrast that with contrast recovery? So we think the complement of the two with the hot and that would be amazing. So still fine tuning and getting the team, testing and looking at where we should be and how do we come out with something that's meaningful, and come out really with something that we know will be powerful right out of the gate. Is something why it's going to take us another 6, 8, 7 months to get that nailed down.
Speaking of hot trends, Tom, GLP-1 medications, I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're making quite the impact in the market. So you guys have a partnership with Dr. B, which is a telehealth, right? So maybe give us some details on that. How did you guys select that partner specifically? I mean, there's a lot of people who do GLP-1s, and then what does that look like as far as an integration into fit in the house of brands as a partnership?
Yeah, we did a lot of vetting to get the right folks because, you have to have with something that you're injecting had to be proven and something that we'd always be proud of our partnership with that. So Dr. B is proven. They have the right mentality from a partnership standpoint. But it's very controversial for us because, right out of the gate, as predicted, a lot of folks were like, oh, we don't want to be encouraging people taking GLP-1. But our position came right out of the gate was always, we're not encouraging it. We know 9% of the population are taking it now. We know that there's a muscle loss issue, and we want to be there for them to help create muscle mass by working out with us. And by the way, a lot of, roughly 9% of your members, probably less than for our environment, we'll call it 5%, are already on GLP-1. And we also want the people that have lost the weight and have never been to a gym or haven't been to a gym in 20, 30 years to now have the courage to want to come and work out with us. So we wanted to be out there from a marketing standpoint saying, hey, we're the solution headquarters for you. Congratulations. You feel better about yourself. You have more energy. You want to come work out. Make it us. Come to us. And by the way, if you're taking GLP-1s now, which you are because you lost the weight, we need to train you and teach you about why building lean muscle mass is critical and so important to your longevity and quality of life. So we want to be a part of that more so than selling anything. We don't really care about the selling part of it. It gave us a marketing tool to go speak to those folks. It gave us a reason to, be an important part of that whole ecosystem of taking GLP-1 and not having somebody that's embracing that with them and not being judgmental. Saying, great, you're taking it. Obviously, there's a lot of positive news and scientific data around GLP-1. So, the school of thought of, that's cheating or whatever, like, okay, great. Well, you're not going to beat back that mentality necessarily. But listen, we want to embrace the people that are making those healthy lifestyle changes and are moving in a positive direction. And we want to be a part of that journey with them. So for me, that's where it all started. And if the franchisees can create another revenue stream and take advantage of that, and give them a good solution, great, because we also have Dietitian Live, which we're very proud of. So we have the dietary services. So combining all this with the exercise element is exactly what you should be doing. Diet with the GLP-1 and the workout itself. That's a 1, 2, 3 punch combination. It's spot on trend for what we want to be. We're not judgmental, just like, we don't have the mirrors in the studios, for F45, it's non-judgment zone. Anybody can come work out with us. You could be a total beginner who's never been in a gym and come work out. You might see the energy and the music and people high-fiving and loving it and think, this and that. But when you really look at our demo profile, we have an amazing demo profile, a mix from 80-plus-year-old people working out to, obviously the 15, 16-year-old person even working out in the studio. So the GLP-1 for me was important. And, I knew people would be out there, we don't want to be in that business. Well, we're not in that business, but like it or not, they're predicting 15+% in the next, 18 months will be on GLP-1. Yeah. And we want to be a part of that health and wellness journey.
I ask a lot of executives this question. Have you seen data or inclination? A lot of it, people have said anecdotally, yes. But have you seen any signs that people taking GLP-1s who previously wouldn't have engaged in a gym or a fitness routine, is that driving them actually to be more active in the gym? Like what are you seeing?
Yes. So we saw the data about people now that have, a lot of great studies around the importance of like leg strength, for example, for balance as you get older. The tragic statistics about if you break a hip when you're over a certain age, over 60, and your mortality rate after that has been incredible.
All right, Tom. So the last question I have for you, and this is very timely as of today's recording, tariffs. Like you come from the consumer product, right? World, you understand how this can affect the marketplace, but just date people, we're recording this in early April of 2025. Big announcements over the week of what Trump is doing with tariffs and essentially a tariff war and what that could be doing for the economy and our industry. So what do you have your eye on right now, Tom? How are you approaching this time of uncertainty?
Yeah, it's a struggle. I mean, not knowing the uncertainty is always something the market doesn't like. It's what business people don't like. We're worried about consumer goods and time and the supply chain. Luckily we have a lot of our kits, the World Packs, and already pre-bought. But obviously when you import things, you're still paying the tariffs. But yeah, I mean, it's been a tragic week for the stock market. It's been a really tough 3 months for the stock market. Yesterday was 1,600 point drop. Today is way down. I saw the opening, but haven't followed up. But yeah, so listen, an economic downturn, especially a worldwide one, which is what they're predicting because, the U.S. affects all these different countries, is not good for a business like the gym business, but, selfishly, I'm invested in a lot of different deals from tequila to protein powders, and people just don't understand how many different elements there are involved in even building American-made cars. A third of products come from other countries. Even the Teslas have contracts with 300 Chinese factories to get parts. So this is going to be a very complicated and tough time period for a lot of people as we try and figure out like what the hell is happening to us here. Why did this, again, self-inflicted wounds off a growing economy get so sidetracked, and what's the real benefit? And can we really stand up and fight this back to get back on track to a growing economy? And by the way, if you read the book, which I love, The Toyota Way, I mean, there's real benefits to being a worldwide economy. So we've embraced that and we've flourished with the worldwide economy. I'm so very happy, with what's been going on up until recently, because we've now tried to take a worldwide economy and dismantle it and selfishly try and pretend that having everything made in America is a good thing for us, when in reality, we were under 4% unemployment, just 4 months ago. It's growing. I think it's at 4.3 already with the layoffs. Competition is good, which the Toyota Way talks a lot about. When we gave money to the executives in Detroit, the car industry, they just basically gave themselves huge bonuses and never, invested in the employees and technology and the things that Toyota has done. And then culturally, when you stop the assembly line in America, when you're building a car, you were chastised and they'd say, what are you doing? Why did you stop the line? Well, they were missing a bolt. Don't do it again, basically. In Japan, they cheered you. They actually cheered you for stopping line because you caught something wrong. So that, for me, is why I really used to love the book, because I love the cultural elements and how that was so much different. So for me, just culturally learning about business stuff, which, all those books behind me are all business books, sadly enough. But, I just love that part of it. But now it really amplifies how important it is to have competition and why, we don't have to have cars leaking oil on our driveways anymore, or have to lift the door to shut it because the hinges are wobbly, so, and then, by the way, the cost of labor in the States, again, there's a reason why our cost of labor is high, because we have a higher standard of living. There are other countries like Bangladesh where they can, they're working for a lot less. their overhead's less, their cost of living is a lot less. So there's a reason why it's worked and complemented each other. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to understand pretty fast all the different nuances and how it affects us, and why having a worldwide economy is important and beneficial to us. Because when you have under 4%, even if it's, around 4 is still a good number. And all of a sudden pretending that we're going to have all these factories, that take years and years to build, and we're going to have all these resources to man the factories, and is just really a problem. But selfishly for F45 and FSA and Fit House of Brands, VAURA, Ion, people have to have disposable income and feel good about. The good news for us, just like the alcohol businesses, people will spend when things are bad and good. So people need to work out more when they're stressed. So we want to, again, be that solution headquarters for people that are feeling the pain, who will find the money to spend it on their health, because sadly, people are probably going to have to work longer now. So they have to be healthy for that. They have to have energy for that. So that's where we will position ourselves as the go-to solution for people that are struggling and feeling the pain, and why investing in your health is a great investment. Unlike the booze business, which, they're drinking when they're happy and they're drinking when they're sad. We're the opposite. We want you to work out when you're happy because it's the right thing to do. And when you're struggling and you're feeling, because, by the way, even depression, working out is a magic solution for people with depression and who are struggling. So we want to, this will give us a better opportunity to position ourselves properly, again, to get people to come and work out with us for all the right reasons.
Yeah. It's, I opened my first gym in 2008, which, as you remember, Tom, was not the best time. And I did a little bit of research and am I crazy for doing this right now? And same thing back then is, people will spend money on their health and they'll spend money on booze. Yes. And, that's that. And it, we didn't skip a beat. No one came in and said, hey, I'm not joining because I can't afford it right now. People were spending less money on travel, spending less money on other things. But when it came to their health and fitness and local recreation, I could say, through booze, and then it worked.
Yeah. Well, even our sports nutrition business, Performance Inspired Nutrition, during COVID, we double digit up over double digit year before. People are now having smoothies and taking better care of themselves. So even on that end of the spectrum, and some of my other investments in the health and wellness space, took off. So again, it's all on how you position it, but people will naturally turn to wanting to be healthier and just beat back the stress by, burning off the negative energy. Even, I'm a person that, never likes to drink or do anything that distracts when I'm under stress. For me, I've just naturally always want to be clear-minded, work out more, burn off the energy. So just anecdotally, I live it myself, so seeing that, unfortunately, I don't want to see the country, go through this economic downturn. I mean, I don't want to see people struggling and worried about their future and everything else. But, we seem to be on that path. Hopefully everybody will, catch their breath and things will work out faster rather than later, because again, we're still going to do well either way, because, again, the nice thing about where we are, health wellness is never going to go away. Quality of life improvements never going to stop. People always want to, not only live longer, but have better quality of life. And all the scientific data around the benefits of lean muscle mass and working out, continue to support all of our investment in time and money into these categories. So we're just really, we can't lose at this point, and just everything we're doing is working, because everything we're doing is pressure tested and, mindful and, built around supporting our franchise system and our members. So that's always a good place to be.
Love it. Love it. Well, Tom, thank you for spending some of your Friday morning with me. I'm so happy that compared to a year and a half ago, we're singing a very different tune. And it's I've been a fan of F45 brand for a long time. So good to see it. Job well done. And let's catch up again in a year and see where things have come.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Dowd.
Thank you.